So I was out to dinner with Mazzy and my girlfriend Amanda the other day, and of course we were talking about music as we usually do. And we started talking about our channels. And Mazzy's a rock star in this world. We all know that. He's taught us all so much, and he's got such a good approach. And he's very positive. He is one of the most positive people about music that I've ever met, if not the most positive. He seems to like everything. He can find something to like in just about everything I've noticed. So I was like, well, isn't there some stuff you just don't like? Aren't there some albums by artists that you love that you just hate? And he's like, started to nod, and then I'm like, you should do a video on that. Like 10 artists that have records you hate, by 10 artists that you love that have records that you hate, or 10 terrible records by artists that you love. And he got pretty excited about it, and the wheels were kind of turning for me too. He went home, and I think he did it that same night and posted it the next morning. And I started to kind of jot down and go through my collection, or just think about like who would make my list. And yeah, I came up with 10. Actually came up with a few more, but I whittled it down. And unlike Mazzy, I don't have a lot of these records in my collection. Either had them on cassette or CD or streamed them, and that was enough. So anyway, this is my collection. 10 terrible albums by artists that I love. Oh, Dylan, of course, had to be on here. It's a kind of a tough one with Dylan because there's a couple of them that could have fit the bill here, including the record right before this called Empire Burlesque. Who I don't know, I do not know why some people rate that so highly. I find the production to be one of the worst things I've ever heard as far as just trying to make him into an '80s guy. Why did I pick that record? I don't know. I have that downstairs, but anyway, that one's at least memorable, and it has Dark Eyes on it, which is gorgeous. One of his best songs, and one of his best songs from the '80s for sure. Just acoustic, him at the end that kind of makes up for the rest of the record. Knocked Out Loaded. Some people say, "Oh, that has Brownsville Girl on it." I don't know. I don't know. I can't get that far. I find this record to be horrible. It's like a Dylan parody record by Dylan. The album cover is as bad as the record, and I don't know why, but they had to show it twice. Maybe he was just so not proud of the music inside that he just decided to show this cover front and back. The only difference on the back is there's a UPC symbol. I don't know. It's a horrible record, and thank God he put out "Oh Mercy" at the end of the decade. I mean, I like the beginning of the decade. I like "Shot of Love." That was on Mazzy's list. I actually love that album. Well, I like that album a lot. I'll stick up for it. "Every Grain of Sand" is one of his best songs for sure, and that's on that record. But yeah, other contenders, of course, Empire Burlesque for sure, and also Down in the Groove. Okay, I've got a big list here. This is another artist, '60s artist. Absolutely love, like Dylan, most of his catalog, especially his initial band. One of my favorite bands of all time. I'm talking about the Velvet Underground. I'm talking about Lou Reed. Now, most people's minds are probably kind of wondering, well, what Lou Reed is he going to pick? Because there's a lot of them. I mean, some people might pick Metal Machine music. Other people might pick, I don't know, the Bells. The Bells for sure. I used to have it on vinyl. I bought it the same day I bought this record, and boy, did that kind of teach me a little bit about Lou Reed. The one I'm going to show is Lou Reed's "Growing Up in Public." Serious Lou Reed. But then you look at the back of it, and that's kind of how the record sounds. I don't know. It's pretty bad. I guess it was done over a few drunken weeks in Jamaica, I think, or the Bahamas. It just there's nothing appealing about this record. I'm sure you could dig deep and find some lyrical insights here. He's got a song called "The Power of Positive Drinking." There might be some songs on here. I don't know. I haven't listened to it since I probably bought it. I tried to listen to it. Be honest here. I tried listening to it before I did this video. I tried listening to it on Sunday, and got just two songs in, and I was like, why don't I listen to something else? So anyway, "Growing Up in Public" makes my list of a terrible record by an artist that I love. One of the saddest things I think about Prince passing away was that he didn't really go out on top. I think that his last record, Hit and Run Part 2, was good, but not excellent, not great. Um, and I just wanted him to like put out like he was certainly capable of it, and I think it just would have been a matter of time before he'd put out like another like brilliant record, and maybe several of them. But he has some real missteps, to put it kindly, in his catalog. I don't think he was ever really the same after he did the Batman soundtrack. I like to joke around that Batman killed him. But there were moments, and that, yeah, definitely there were moments like the Gold Experience. He put that out under the symbol when he was at war with Warner Brothers over the rights to his master tapes. I believe that was the first one. Yeah, it was. The album before that was a little strange, weird. That was the Calm album where he's got like his birth date and his death date on it, and he would show up on Letterman and do a song and then pretend like he was dead at the end of it. But he put out this weird like contract filler record after the Gold Experience, which was held up for quite a bit. I remember I saw him live around that time at Paisley Park, and he talked at great length about how he wanted to get that record out, and it was up to him. He would just give us his music, and he that record was great. I love that record when it came out. The follow up though was definitely a contract filler in his feud with Warner Brothers. That was Chaos and Disorder. It's just kind of like Prince. You never, I don't know. He just kind of lost it with this record. I know he did, maybe just didn't care. It's similar to the Cum record where it just feels like it is like a contract killer. Okay, fine, Warner Brothers. Here you go. Here's a record. But I think when you do that, you really do a disservice to your fans. I know someone like me who was on a real high with him with the Gold Experience and having seen him live got so disillusioned by Chaos and Disorder. Just like, what is this? I mean, the big song, or if you want to call it that, with Dinner with Dolores, which is nothing special. The rest of them are completely forgettable songs, or at least in my mind. And I know I tried to listen to that record, but it left such a sour taste in my mouth that I didn't get excited and never even picked up Emancipation, the triple record that he did after that. It's like, oh, do I want 3 records of this stuff? I've since listened to it and find there are things in there to enjoy, but yeah, not a fan at all. And I do think that Chaos and Disorder is a terrible record by a artist I love, a brilliant artist named Prince. Next one, I tried to stay away from this a little bit. I didn't want to do just a bunch of records by bands that change their lineup. I mean, a good example would have been the Velvet Underground's album Squeeze, right? But I tried to stay away from that. But there's one that I just couldn't resist putting on here, and that is Pink Floyd's album that they did in 1987 without Roger Waters. It's like you took, it's like you, somebody said this about the live album. I think Rolling Stone said it's like proving that you can't, the live album that came out, the one that Delicate Sound of Thunder, proving that you can't make a good live album from a light show. I would say kind of the same thing about a similar sentiment to Momentary Lapse of Reason. Proof that just because you're called Pink Floyd, you can't really make a Pink Floyd record. Now I know some people like that record. I tried. I really tried. It came out when I was like 15, so you would think that that might have really clicked for me. Fortunately, I'd already been introduced to Pink Floyd and saw it for what it was, just a money-making grab. I mean, I maybe not. Maybe it's just like, hey, Waters ran away. We still want to make music. Good, cool. It just was really, really boring stuff, I think, and not anything I ever really care to go back to. So yeah, a terrible record by a band that I love would be A Momentary Lapse of Reason by Pink Floyd. So much so that I don't think I ever really gave the Division Bell a fair chance. I just didn't care. Another one by a band that artist that I love that some people will probably be screaming about. Oh, you haven't really listened to it. I almost put another record by him. I think he's got 2 just flat out bad records, and that is Bruce Springsteen. I can sense, I can feel it. I can feel the anger rising in some of you. Human Touch. I'm sorry. It's a bland record. The song's okay. Human Touch. It's like trying to take Tunnel of Love type material, but it's not a breakup record. It's like a happy, falling in love marriage record. But it's like, oh my God, man, you lost your muse there, like big time, or else it's just been produced the hell out of the record. Like it's been just sanded off. I find it to be extremely boring. I don't know if I've ever made it to the end. True, very true. I liked Lucky Town. It took me a long time to get into it though because I had to separate it from Human Touch. If you're curious, the other record that I almost put on here is Working on a Dream. You can judge that one by the album cover. You really can. Minus like an extra song they put on there from the Wrestler movie. Yeah, whatever. We're not talking about that one. Human Touch. Not a good record. Okay, I'm not putting these in any order, but this is the sixth one, just so I can keep track of them. This is a band that I really like a lot of their material. Get annoyed by them just about every album cycle to the point where I wouldn't even see them on tour most of the time. They would annoy the shit out of me. But they would always usually put out really, really good records that if I didn't get into it at the time, I would eventually get into it. And that is U2. Even into the 2000s, there would always be at least one or two songs off of those records that I would really like a lot. And that all changed when they put out their last studio record of new material. And that was Songs of Experience. I believe it came out in 2014 or 2015. So it's been a long time now since they put out their last record of original material. And it was just found them embracing every ridiculous pop trend, pop producer at the time. And it's like they forgot to write songs while they were making it. Just a completely unlistenable, unmemorable record by U2 that, in my mind, I just kind of erased right out of memory, but came up when I was thinking about making this list. Another one I almost feel bad for including because I love this guy, Tom Waits. Like just about everything he's done. Really tend to like more the Island records and what came after that than I do the Asylum kind of one-trick pony thing he was doing. It got really annoying to me after a while. I don't know if I could listen to the album Nighthawks of the Diner, for example. Anyway, I'm really glad he changed his style with Frank's Wild Years, or no, with Swordfish Trombones. And I got into him with Bone Machine, and by that time, with Bone Machine, I bought after that I bought Rain Dogs and Frank's Wild Years and Swordfish Trombones and Small Change and Hardest Saturday Night and Blue Valentine, a couple others. So this is in pre-internet times. I'm in a record store one day and I see that he has a new record, like a new record. I didn't even know it was coming out, and this was only like a year, I think, after Bone Machine came out, and it's called The Black Rider. Like, okay, it looks kind of interesting. The album cover wasn't that great or anything, but it was like written in the same kind of font as Bone Machine, or had that similar kind of edginess look to it. And I bought it and I brought it home, and I was living at my parents' house at the time, and I hardly ever play music with them. They're not really into the same stuff that I am at all. My mom kind of, I don't know, I think she kind of found humor in Tom Waits a little bit from what she had heard of me playing him. So I was like, hey, do you guys mind if I play this? My dad's reading the newspaper, my mom's doing something. I put it on the stereo, and if you guys, those of you that know the record, it's like, ladies and gentlemen, it's a super theatrical thing. My dad's newspaper falls, and he's like, just shakes his head, and he goes, I don't know how you can listen to this stuff. And yeah, I couldn't. I mean, I couldn't really get into that record. There's a couple of good songs on it. William Burroughs thing, the song November. In general, for me, the words Robert Wilson play and Tom Waits, no, like I like his original material that isn't theatrical. Now, Alice and Bone Machine are way, 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 way better than The Black Rider for me. It is the last album I would recommend of Tom Waits to anyone, and yes, kind of consider it a terrible record. Another artist that I talk about a lot on here, big fan of, is Alice Cooper. I love the original Alice Cooper band. I think they're criminally underrated. Don't love their first two records. Pretties for You could have made this as a terrible record. I know some people love it. I think it's unlistenable. But love it to death. Killer, School's Out, $1 Billion Babies, and Muscle of Love from the original band, and Welcome to My Nightmare. I find a lot of humor in the solo stuff. Welcome to My Nightmare is the first one. And I find a lot of humor in Alice Cooper Goes to Hell. But then he put out the follow-up to that, and I think he had a song, I think it cracked like the top 40 at least, called I Never Cry, off of Alice Cooper Goes to Hell, which is kind of this ballad sort of in the style of Only Women Bleed. It's sort of been his thing as a solo artist. He puts out this record, Lace and Whiskey. And it's like this disco infused thing. And my introduction to this was on this ridiculous tape. Now, back in the 80s, you get these weird compilations, and sometimes they wouldn't even tell you what it was, and the internet didn't exist. And I had this compilation with this god awful cover called A Man Called Alice, and it was loaded with songs. And unlike some of the other stuff, I knew it wasn't. I made the mistake of buying some other like really really bad like unreleased songs from the Pretties for You kind of period that were budget cassettes. This one I could tell was like albums, but I didn't know which ones. And it had Teenage Lament 74 and it had Muscle of Love on it, so I knew it had some good things on it. I knew those from the Greatest Hits record. But then the other, so that was one side of the record, like an album. At the time, I didn't know what it was. It turned out it was Muscle of Love. And on the other side was of the cassette was this other album that it took me a long time to realize what it was. Opens up with "It's Hot Tonight," just I don't know, lame song. Disco songs like "No More Love at Your Convenience," "No More Love at Your Convenience." It's horrible. And a song called "You and Me," which I think follows in the like "I Never Cry," kind of boring kind of soft rock song. "You ain't me, ain't no movie stars. What we got is what we are. We something have dinner and watch TV." I think that's kind of the extent of the lyrics. "Damned If You Do." You Bangy Stomp" is on here, which I think he covered recently for another record. I don't really pay much attention to new Alice. He's great live, but I don't know. I listen to the albums usually once. I stream them and then I don't listen to them again. I get a kick out of looking at this. I never noticed this before. This paperback that's on the cover is says 95 cents, but somebody, the previous owner of this record, crossed out 95 cents to write their own 50 cents. That's a good way of putting it. It's a 50-cent record. Okay, next up, I just had to pick a record by him. I don't know. Not many people talk about him. I'm talking about Mark Kozlik, Red House Painters. Put out amazing records in the 90s under Red House Painters. Down Colorful Hill, two self-titled records in the same year. One of them was like a double record just called Red House Painters. Songs for Blue Guitar, which I absolutely love. Old Ramon. There's another one too that I'm forgetting that has a cover of Ace Frehley's "Shock Me" on it. He, as a solo artist, did this amazing, one of my favorite things he's done, album of AC/DC covers called "Up to My Neck," or no, called "What's Next to the Moon." "What's Next to the Moon." Great collection of songs. It just, you have to hear it to sort of believe it that Bon Scott wrote these just really interesting lyrics, and he does a masterful job of it. He had this band and still has this band called Kil Moon, which is really just another name for what he does. Their first couple records are great, really great records, especially the first one, "Ghost of the Highway Strip," I think it's called. I might be confusing that with a Mid-Ag Fields title. I'll put that record in front of my face here, so you can see what I'm talking about. But he kept using that name, and then he started doing this weird spoken word thing. And at first it was really cool. He did this album called Benji, and I was talking about his sister Carissa, who hasn't heard from him forever, and he's just singing this, not even singing, speaking this like long rambling song about his family and some barbecue accident. And there's just tons of songs where it's just like journal entries, but it's interesting. And maybe it's because it was the first time he did it. Problem I have is he's kept doing that. He has not deviated from that formula. He has not written what I would consider a proper song since. And it's really got to be annoying, I think, by the time he put out "This Is My Dinner." Okay, he wrote all these journal entries about his European tour. He talks about this girl that he went home with. He's always talking about going home with younger women and maybe some sexual problems he has, and how he's an old guy, but he thinks he still got it with the ladies. I mean, it gets really ridiculous. He's talking about being chased out of this house by some boyfriend of this girl he's with, and he's like, "I don't understand what the big deal is. She was giving me a hand job and sucking my thumb, blah blah blah." I heard I heard Jeff Tweedy once say that his music, what kind of music does Wilco do? Like some people say it's the or he says it's the "Are you okay" kind of music. Listen to some of these Kil Moon records that came out after Benji, and tell me if this guy's okay. I don't know. I would love for the guy to put out a more conventional record. I'm all for experimentation. Thank God streaming exists. I can't imagine spending my hard-earned money, especially if I was a kid, you know, on a Kil Moon record, thinking you're gonna get something like that first one, or like the Red House Painters, something where you actually sing songs and getting these long 12-minute songs about this girl on a plane that sounds like Linda Blair. She's got this terrible cold, and then he goes on to do his Linda Blair impersonation and just rambles and rambles. The next stop on the tour and getting there and traveling issues and checking into hotels. I mean, it like, wow, wow. Thank God he has his own label, and thank God you can stream this shit for free. Okay, rant over. Okay, next one on the list is Leonard Cohen. I love Leonard Cohen. I do not love Death of a Ladies Man. I don't know what happened other than, well, I guess you put Phil Spector in charge of it when he's really off his rocker. Another guy who just completely lost it. I guess he pulled a gun on Leonard at one point. Well, you think about Leonard Cohen, this like mild mannered guy in a suit, and the producer pulls a gun on him. But I guess, you know, other bands I think put up more with Phil's shenanigans, but Leonard just left, and he left Phil to finish the record and turn it in. And it doesn't sound like a Leonard Cohen record. It sounds like this completely overwrought, overproduced like 70s record. And if there's good material on it, I find it hard to get to under all of the production. Kind of like the song Memories, but I don't play that record enough to get into all of it. It usually annoys me. I tried playing the record behind me, I think I said, growing up in public, and I got into like 3 songs to refresh my memory, and I just was like, life's too short. Why? I'm not listening to these records. And no, I don't have them in my collection. I just, why? I'm not. So that wraps it up. Those are 10 records that I find pretty terrible by artists that I love. Some of these artists I continued on with after they put out these records. Some of them it was kind of like, no, unless something really changes, just not that interested. But I had fun doing this. For some reason, it's always fun to kind of just go a little negative and rant about stuff. So here's my rant. Here's my 10 artists that put out 10 terrible records by artists that I love. Thanks.